and welcome, dear friends, as we continue this 20th year of the Turner Winter Series. I'm Maureen Raveno, and I am delighted to offer this welcome on behalf of Greg Peterson, the founder and perennial host of the Turner Winter Series these many years. We welcome with delight those of you who are with us this evening in the comfort of the Kappa Theater here in the Robert H. Jackson Center, as well as those who are enjoying this program virtually. It is my great pleasure to begin our evening with a brief introduction of our guest, Randall Perry, after which I will turn the conversation over to Jamestown's and the Jackson Center's own Greg Peterson. Randall Perry is the Executive Director of the Chautauqua Lake and Watershed Management Alliance. He works on a variety of lake, watershed, and research initiatives in partnership with Alliance members and with other stakeholders, all aimed at protecting and enhancing the health and usability of Chautauqua Lake. Prior to beginning his tenure as the executive director in late 2020, Randall worked as the Alliance's project manager since 2016. Before joining the Alliance, he served as an adjunct instructor at Fredonia State University of New York, teaching geoscience and environmental science courses with a focus on water resources, geochemistry, surficial processes, and environmental assessment. Before that, he worked as a geological consultant specializing in environmental and water resource projects. Randall is a native of Maine, where he earned his bachelor and master's degrees in earth sciences from the University of Maine, with a focus on environmental geochemistry. And so, with this impressive background, I am very pleased to welcome back Randall Perry with Greg Peterson to give us an update on the state of our Chautauqua Lake.
You could join us for this is probably our 5th year. Always our inaugural event is with you to learn about what happened the year prior, regarding Chautauqua Lake and its activities, but most importantly, the Maine Bears and what happened this year. Any highlights with regards to hockey teams, football teams? I think there was a women's football last year.
Well, I know the Black Bears hockey team seems to be back on track, which is exciting as somebody whose youth was spent ignorant of the fact that they could not be good. So I've gone through some years of struggle. So now they seem to be back in the mix, and it's nice to see that. So if you ever make it to Orono, Alfond Arena is a great place to catch a game, and I think you'd enjoy it.
Well, so did you play hockey?
No. Just a fan.
Just a fan. Well, I'm a fan of yours, and I have a chance to kind of observe from a distance all the activities that you've been doing at the Chautauqua Lake and Watershed Management Alliance. And I know we have people watching in on Zooming in right now, and we'll also be watching it via YouTube, which always we get several hits when we show it. But you are the executive director, and how would you define the Chautauqua Lake and Watershed Management Alliance?
Well, thanks, Greg. We're a non-for-profit organization. We were formed in late 2014. We started operations in 2015. We are a member organization. We have 31 founding members, which include the governmental bodies around Chautauqua Lake, the 5 towns, 4 villages, the county of Chautauqua, many of the nonprofit organizations that are so important for Chautauqua Lake for many, many years. Also utilities like the Jamestown Board of Public Utilities, the North Sewer District, the South and Center Chautauqua Sewer District. So we got a very broad cross-section of members, and that's really what makes all this work, is that breadth of interest and passion and expertise, and we're very fortunate I'm very fortunate today, you get to hear my voice, but you're really hearing about the work of all these groups and all these individuals and teams of individuals working together. And of course, not much of it happens without the dollars. So our local philanthropic funders, the local charitable foundations, the county government itself, the state government through its grant programs, all this alignment of resources and needs and capabilities. I think that's really where where the strength of the alliance, lies, and trying to aim those resources towards the lake and the watershed, not just for today, but trying to keep it rolling for the next many, many years. We do a variety of it's largely driven by grant-related work, so seeking and securing funds and then facilitating and administering those grants. We've also had the great opportunity to assist some of the great research initiatives that have gone on in the lake in the past in terms of archiving and collating information and bringing it up to present day and trying to put it out into the hands of these new research teams that are coming in. So any given day, there's a lot of different directions that our efforts can go, but I think that's how I look at it. And I'd certainly be very remiss if I didn't thank our board of directors. We have a very strong board elected from across our membership by our members. We have a board of 9. They represent the county government. They represent elected officials from those towns and villages around Chautauqua Lake. And then we have at-large seats that represent those other organizations that do so much in the lake and in the watershed. And they're volunteers. They put in a lot of time and a lot of effort to help the organization, but really to help the collective Chautauqua Lake community. So I'm always worried that I'm not going to thank somebody, but I just hope that I've expressed just that team effort that it takes to do this. So,
What was the genesis of it? I mean, when you peel back the onion, this was something created in 2014 to fill a need. What was the need that had not been addressed prior to that? It was felt that there was was it a county initiative saying, gee, we should have a not-for-profit organization? Were there individuals saying, for example, funding sources? I'm familiar with the number of foundations. We're blessed to have a number of foundations in the area, and they get requests from each separate, diverse organization. Was there a kind of a suggestion that let's kind of put all this together and so that we have one grant request?
That's certainly the funding framework has evolved even in the last 10 years, plus or minus, of operations. It's changed a lot just in the last, I'd say, 5 or 6 years, even 7 or 8. Initiation, it was really an evolution. The Chautauqua Lake Management Commission was a body of individuals appointed and formed by the county government that did a lot of great work to get us to the jumping off point for the alliance. Certainly the large number of funders, the large number of organizations necessitated, or to those making the decisions, necessitated more of a hub, more of a coordinated tool that could help bring people and ideas together, help coordinate the work, and consolidate the money. And then ultimately nonprofits have the ability to do certain things that governments may be less able to do. So it did fill that need. But since then, since the formation, since the beginning of operations, I think we've also evolved a lot within our own structure, our own framework. We've been asked to do certain things. We've taken on those challenges, and we certainly look forward to kind of seeing where the next stage in progress lies. A lot of work was done to lay the foundation, to bring by many, all the way back to the early 2000s. The county and local stakeholders worked very, very diligently to create a state of the lake report, really bringing Chautauqua Lake, the decades and decades of interest and use and data together into one very comprehensive document. moving forward, the county commissioned through grant funding and again through that local stakeholder process, the watershed management plan, which was a massive undertaking, which really sets the table even today of knowledge about our watershed, that 100,000 acres that feeds Chautauqua Lake and really determines so much about the lake's quality, but also the people that live around it. And then from there, the macrophyte management strategy, another county-led but stakeholder informed document. So each step along the way has really been building, and we're just very excited, I think, to see what that next set of steps holds.
You are known as the Chautauqua Lake Peterson Watershed Management Alliance. Is this a distinction without a difference, or there really is a distinction?
I think there's a distinction. I think that "and" is very specifically placed in the order. I think that the organization and its membership strives to work in both realms, the watershed and the lake. The day-to-day interaction is so much driven by the lake and its water quality and its water chemistry on a daily basis, whether there's plants or algae or clarity or, just that has such an acute effect on tourism and the people that live along the lake and rely on it for their businesses or personal enjoyment. But that watershed is that long-term modulator of the lake. So both are really, really critical, but both work on very different time frames. So really trying to make sure that if you're going to work on one, you got to also be on the hook for the other one, so that you can really try to strike that balance and understand that yes, this stormwater project that's going on up in the watershed, it's going to pay off over decades. But that day-to-day operation at the Chautauqua Lake Association or the town of Chautauqua running its Moby-Track programs, on a given day or a given week, that might make somebody's entire summer, good or bad. So both are really, really important, and it's sometimes with local dollars, it's sometimes a zero-sum game where if you take away from one to add to another, you work off the same dollar. But that's where those outside grants through the state can be so critical, because those can work over those 3 to 5 year time horizons. We really try to put as many of those available dollars into watershed projects, especially by working with the towns and villages and their public works and highway crews. They're instrumental in those watershed projects, but also among our membership. The Chautauqua Watershed Conservancy does a lot of work in the watershed, not just with implementing and helping people implement, but with education outreach. Chautauqua Institution has been a leader setting the blueprint for how to manage stormwater in a highly developed area along the lake. So there's just so much synergy and working together from watershed to lake that it's a critical piece of what we look at, where we can't ignore either. But we also need to keep them in perspective, because they drive very different conversations. They often tap very different funding streams, and they often behave on very different human felt timelines.
Define the watershed. I mean, you will sometimes be driving towards Chautauqua Lake, I think coming from Sugar Grove, and all of a sudden I'm going down Big Tree, Sugar Grove Road, and on a place seemingly there's a sign, not on the other side of the hill, but on this side, towards Sugar Grove, where it says Chautauqua Watershed Conservancy. How do you define it?
Yeah, so watershed is generally speaking an area of land that is defined as that area that when a raindrop falls on it, it drains to a common receiving water body. So just about any body of water can have a watershed defined. For Chautauqua Lake, it's about 100,000 acres, and the lake itself is about 13,000 acres. So that sense of scale. It's about a 9x, ratio. So yeah, it's an area of land. It crosses governmental boundaries. We've got little clips of, you mentioned Sugar Grove. The town of Busti has a large area of its town that's outside the watershed, and a large area of its town, and in addition, the village of Lakewood that's within the watershed. So each town's unique too, because they're working on jurisdictional boundaries, and the watershed doesn't obey those. So that's often a challenge, but it also presents an opportunity because you're getting to work and tap the resources of a lot of different municipalities that share the lake.
With that, Ron, then of course there's an economic factor, and just on the tax for Chautauqua County, the tax base, the assessment base. I know there are some statistics which talk about the impact of Chautauqua Lake and how it affronts a certain amount of tax as it relates to the total tax base. Is that a percentage you have at the top of your head?
There's a number, and I'm sure depending on the conversations, there can be slight tweaks to it depending on how the definitions and the numbers are used by, so if I give a number, you may find 5 other people that have a slightly different number, but, and those numbers, I can only say thank you to the, I say thank you to the planning department, the County of Chautauqua's planning department. They have been huge in gathering this type of information that's very beneficial to us. So it's about 25% roughly of the value, the tax base to the property tax that's within a very small, narrow ribbon of homes and properties that bound the lake. If you picture Route 394 and Route 430, kind of that beltway area. So that close proximity to the lake, it's about 25% of the property tax value. Sales tax revenue is another interesting number. About half of the county's sales tax is being generated by municipalities that border Chautauqua Lake. And then kind of looking out broader, somewhere on the order of 300 million roughly that's spent, through tourism here, and it's reported that about 2/3 of the visitors utilize some lake or water body, so rivers, streams, lakes, not just Chautauqua, that would be all the waterways in the county, but it just speaks to how important Chautauqua Lake is specifically here. And it drives so much, not just those numbers, but the cultural significance, the jobs that are generated, the tourism, the fishing, can go on and on and on. And what else?
Have you noticed over the last time, since you've been involved in really 2016, and before that as a teacher at Fredonia, the prioritizing of the focus on tourism as a driving economic force, and as part of that tourism economic driving force is the lake? I mean, have you noticed a kind of more of a conversation, whether it's political or public-wise, on that aspect of it?
I don't think in 2016 everyone woke up to the fact that it was important. I think it certainly was known long before I showed up, and it'll be long after I leave. But I think maybe the specificity with which the numbers can be generated, the occupancy tax program, it predates that timeline that you laid out, but it's been growing and evolving over time, and that's an important indicator of visitation. The bed tax that the county has in place. I think the outside interest. I think anytime outside interest steps up, whether it's monetary or other types of investments, it sometimes creates a stronger dialogue around those details. So yeah, I think the way I perceive those numbers and that importance has increased since I've been here, but it's probably that I'm paying attention more to, I'd like to think. So it's probably a mix of those things.
Well, just from a personal perspective, and I've been around here since day one, it was just sort of an afterthought, the lake, the activity, the tourism, some fishing, some this, some that, it was there. Now the conversation is much more heavily weighted that within the county infrastructure, tourism is now discussed at the same level as manufacturing, as other opportunities, and certainly even organizations, the chambers of commerce, et cetera, accent as much as, not to the exclusion of other commercial and commercial and industrial, but tourism destination as a location.
Yeah, and I'd credit, I'm sure there's plenty of people to credit, but somebody like Mark Geis, the CEO of the Industrial Development Agency, he's been very consistent and very, broad and strong in tying those things together. And that could be part of it too, is just more of an interest in those businesses, and because we need the businesses, we need the industry, we need the jobs, but we also need people to want to come to Chautauqua for other reasons, not just siting and logistical things. So really marrying the natural resources with those very strong economic needs, I think is probably a big part of how that conversation has strengthened, and the lake has maybe taken more of a forefront in some of those dialogues.
Well, the dialogues, it's not lost on the foundations. I'm just looking at the list that, and I will probably make a mistake, but Lene, Sheldon, Community Foundation, Gebbe, Holmberg, Holquist are just among a few of the foundations who participate in assisting in the funding. Do you have, I'm curious more about the inside baseball aspect of it, when they have a grant cycle, they all have grant cycles, but do they look to you as to provide the application for the big scheme funding for lake and watershed? Do they say, all right, will you send to us, and pick a date, January 1st of 2025, a request? So that do they look at it separately, or do they look at it collectively? How do they work?
We've been very fortunate to have arrived at a situation where we, the Alliance, have been asked to consolidate those lake and watershed related funding requests into a single application. So we've been doing that now for roughly 7 years, with fluctuating. Some of those foundations you named still handle individual applications, and then some look for that full package. However funders, want to look at those, I am more than happy to deliver that any way I can, because, those dollars and that generosity is just, we can't, it's so critical. But yeah, we've set up a framework through some strategic plans that were put in place in around 2018, using multiple criteria to try to evaluate projects for both the watershed and the lake, with objective and member solicited feedback on how weighting and scoring might work. So we utilize a pretty structured framework where the last several years at least, around summertime, we'll go out to our membership and we'll ask for proposals and funding requests for what they want to do in the following year. We have a wonderful group of volunteers who look at those and help get them prepped for our board of directors consideration. Usually in the fall, then our board will review and prioritize those requests, put it together into a consolidated package, and then we'll submit those to the participating foundations, usually starting in the fall into the early part of the year. And then by around February or March, we've got a good idea of what a major chunk of that lake funding looks like for the year. So, it's not perfect. Nothing ever is. There's still improvements that we try to make each year. We do it. We try to learn a little bit and adjust things if they need adjusting. But being able to kind of see that whole chessboard laid out early in the year I think is really important, and I think it comes through when you can talk about not just the lake maintenance that you want to do for that year, but the lake maintenance paired with the invasive species prevention or the watershed work. If you can lay all that out in a consistent and a coordinated way, I think that adds a lot of value to good lake management. So yeah, we've been very fortunate to have that chance, and but evolution continues to be, part of our existence.
So the agencies who are looking for financial assistance to do a project present it to the Alliance. The Alliance vets it, prioritizes it, and then in turn, once they've done that, they'll make a singular application to this consortium of funders.
Yeah, that's a pretty clear way of laying it out.
And then, once you get the letters of, grant letters from those funders, you now know how much money you have, to in turn go backwards, it was kind of go downstream, to say, all right, I have X dollars for this project. So then you grant those agencies, you got $100,000, you got $200,000 for this project. And then, curious as to, do you have a mechanism to see how well they've done with that project, so they get money from you? Mm-hmm. And do they report back to you saying, all right, thank you very much for your 100,000, here's our report 1 year later?
Yeah, we have a reporting protocol in place, so around the end of the year, plus a little bit to give time to wrap up books and things like that. So yes, we do have an end of year report or an end of project report if it's a project that might go longer than a single year. But we'll also get check-ins, either informal or if needed, formal check-ins. So depending on the project, different types of projects and programs will have kind of deliverables of opportunity that vary. So for instance, if a project has a DEC permit tied to it, we would get copies of those permits, so we would have a general idea of what's going on as the year unfolds. Somebody like the Chautauqua Lake Association, who works with the town of Chautauqua Moby Tracks on the shoreline side of things, and the Chautauqua Lake Association runs equipment, all summer long on the lake. Their website is wonderful. They put up reports on what they plan to do and where they plan to be and what they've achieved during the past week. So there's a lot of check-in opportunities for the projects. The Chautauqua Watershed Conservancy, another example of, through newsletters or through updates at meetings, we certainly take great interest in what our members are doing during the year, not only to maintain an understanding and awareness of how the grants are being used, but also there's oftentimes great opportunities for collaboration or for working with one another during a year if you get the right people talking in front of one another, and if there's a problem on one side where somebody needs something or is having an issue, our membership is very capable of providing either ideas or sometimes even assistance to help make the overall project, overall outcome better. So communication is key. You can't have enough of it. You can't do it too early, and it's really critical to this type of work.
You also seem to be a clearinghouse for information. There are many initiatives going on the lake, studies, and I know you've used the term comprehensive collaborative lake research efforts with science to solutions approach. Is that where one of the benefits of the website and the Chautauqua Current, which is another articles you send out periodically, to gather information, and then those who are not maybe directly involved can get access to that information?
Yeah, absolutely. My coworker Jay Young, he's our communications coordinator, and he does an excellent job maintaining our website and putting out those Chautauqua Current articles in partnership with the Post Journal. Getting this information housed in a good spot where people can be sent to find it, or it can be shared out with something as simple as a web link, is critical. We want to see this information get used. We know that it's getting used often by those who generate it, but when we can share that out with others who maybe don't need it right away, but maybe in time they do, there's a lot of follow-on value to these investments. These are massive undertakings, whether it's a lake-wide plant survey or a comprehensive report written by the Jefferson Project. They can be overwhelming when you sit down when they first get published, but even years later, these things still have a lot of value. And what's been great is when new research teams come in, or when a researcher comes into an existing team, or say a project gets underway and a consultant is asked to gather background information, those online resources, that repository and that awareness of what is where, has been really, really valuable for getting people up to speed quickly, so that there's not as much maybe remedial work that happens at the start of a project, because people are spending a lot of time trying to dig and sort through boxes or digital archives, trying to lay their hands on it. So I think that's so critical. And I think also trying to bring these data sets as much as possible into a GIS platform, a Geographical Information Systems platform, using things like Google Earth. And we have our former project manager, Taylor West. He left to join DEC earlier in 2024. He did an amazing job getting us such a solid foundation of these data sets into GIS and other readily shareable and readily more ready for visualization, because getting that information in your hands is one thing. Getting it out in a meaningful way to somebody sitting at a table or a decision maker who maybe doesn't want all 500 pages of that report. They may want, items 1, 2, and 3 in a concise manner, and being able to help do that is really gratifying. And I think it's also a really important piece of all of this, because unless we're using this stuff that we've gathered and learned over years past, we're not going to have as full a picture as we could. So it's really, really important.
Again, reading, I may have the benefit of something Randall put together for me, because he knew I was challenged. So I appreciate that. And among the things you say thank you is for those who assisted in creating this collaborative lake research effort. Is places like the Jefferson Project, Stantec, Bowling Green, SUNY Fredonia, SUNY Oneonta, the SUNY ESF, U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, North Carolina State University, Racine Johnson, aquatic ecologist, Rooney aquatic biologist, Ready Scouts, Solitude, Lake Management, Princeton Hydro, and so much more. I mean, that's a lot of people who are focused on Chautauqua Lake. Are there executive summaries, and is that something you do where there's all this data is there, but is there ability for your staff or someone to take that and say, all right, here's what they're, or at least maybe it's in the front of each study, is the executive summary, which people can read in 2 or 3 pages? Well,
a lot of that's dictated by whoever the entity was that hired and arranged that work. So, while we play a big role in some of those projects in terms of the funding piece, the means and methods, the specifics of the arrangement, it's really driven by the alliance member, or in some cases the regulatory agency that's dictating that. Ideally, that kind of summary is oftentimes attached to a technical report. Do I have every last one of them? I probably would say no. Now, one thing that because that can be daunting when you look back and you say, well, shoot, should we put somebody on that? Should we synthesize? Should we summarize? Well, what if nobody's coming looking for that specific thing? Is that time well spent? Versus having a matrix to show somebody who's truly interested in digging in and saying, from these years, I have these types of reports. if they zoom in on something and have interest, that's when a much more, I think, effective conversation can happen of, okay, what, A, where is it? B, why was it done? What was some of the background? What have you gathered from it? Where else might I look? So those types of person-to-person things are really important. But I will say that when you look at that list and when you think about the types of minds that are working on Chautauqua Lake, even a report that maybe doesn't have, right up front, that executive summary, an inquisitive and a capable person can usually get to the bottom of what they need. But from the public perspective and the stakeholder perspective, that's also a really important audience where they may not necessarily be trying to make a decision based on this information. They're just trying to understand it, why it was done, what it means. And that's where, again, not necessarily having an index of summary A, summary B, summary C, that's a good idea. But trying to, through our other outlets, whether it's through an article when a report comes out, and trying to put into, the more common tongue, kind of the big take-homes. We've really tried to emphasize that, especially in the last couple of years. So we certainly don't ignore it, but we also, don't necessarily have a by-the-book way of we take every report and we put it into our own, parlance, or call somebody up and say, hey, reissue this thing with a different structure. When we're asked to give feedback, that's oftentimes feedback that we give, but
certain projects which got more notoriety than others already, like the Jefferson project. And that's been, I think Chautauqua Institution and others kind of have been supportive of that. Has it been used a lot? Has it got enough data from that to get some sort of sense of what they're finding?
Yeah, last year was a big milestone in that a very comprehensive report was issued to the county, actually, but the county made it available widely to us and to it's publicly available. It really brought the Jefferson project kind of up to date from 2020 to 2023. Since then, they've obviously gathered more information. They've adjusted some of their investigative initiatives. They're still focused on that main big picture, largely of, what are the dynamics of this lake in terms of physical and chemical dynamics? What are the dynamics of our algal populations, particularly those that are harmful in nature and capable of producing toxins? Really trying to drive at the why of why do some blooms occur the way they do? Why do some blooms create toxins? Why do some not? Really trying to get at that solutions-oriented piece. So that's not a simple thing, and it's not something that's going to be cracked in a year or even a couple of years. That being said, I think by evolving their approach, not hugely, they've largely used similar equipment over similar years. They've made upgrades to that equipment. This year, they've introduced stream stations through the generosity of the Ralph C. Sheldon Foundation. They constructed these stream stations on 6 of our tributaries, which is massive in terms of the investment and the resource that now represents. But the fact that they're evolving as they go tells me that they are learning and that they are putting those past data points to use, either to say, I need more of this, or I need to move on to something else. And, there's been a large infusion by the state that was recently announced through the leadership of the institution and the work that the institution and the Jefferson Project staff has done. The state will now be providing a large chunk of funding to help keep that program moving. But it's like anything. Sometimes those questions, they don't just immediately yield answers. They oftentimes yield more questions, but the hope is that those questions are better and that you're moving towards, towards that final, or whatever can be considered a final answer. But depending on what that, it's such a big question. It's one that I think we've really scratched the surface on, and I think we've really made some strides. Bringing in the Army Corps of Engineers now, the County of Chautauqua partnering with the Army Corps on a 3-year aquatic ecosystem restoration feasibility study, dovetailing that with the data generation and the research that's being led by the Jefferson Project is huge. The timing of how those pieces are fitting together is just very, very exciting. While also the State Department of Environmental Conservation being looped in as well is a very powerful trio to have aimed at this lake at a very critical time.
In October, the county formally signed an agreement with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers to do a 3-year project on the lake called the Aquatic Ecosystem Restoration Feasibility Study. And there was a meeting recently, last week, I think, a couple days worth, with the Army Corps of Engineers. And the chairman of the legislature, Pierre Chagnon, described it as a charrette. And a summary of the charrette is expected to be presented at a public forum in the next 2 or 3 months. I never heard the term. What's it mean?
It was fascinating. I knew somebody by the name of charrette where I grew up, and that's the only thing I can picture with every time they kept saying it. But apparently, it's a French term for a cart that an instructor would roll around to collect architectural student assignments. The charrette would be rolled, and the assignments would be placed in the rolling cart, and that's where the term is from. So if I took nothing else away from the charrette, I did at least learn what a charrette was. But it's a problem-solving, focused stakeholder gathering to really try to reach, make progress on a specific issue where there's oftentimes complexity. That's the way the term's being used today.
So the idea at this 2-day meeting was for stakeholders to throw their findings into the charrette and is it so the Army Corps could gather it and ultimately digest it? Is that, am I getting that correct?
Well, like Pierre, I would certainly defer to the summary that's going to be provided at a public, session as to exactly what the process is and was. I can say that it gave me great, I'd say it buoyed my spirits, my outlook on things just by getting to be a part of it. I think a lot of the right people are getting in front of a lot of other right people, and this thing is heading in a good direction. But under the guidance and under the very structure of the Army Corps and their leadership, ultimately they're going to be the ones to drive this process forward. So yeah, it's a lot about objectives, goals. What do we know? What don't we know? Where's uncertainty lie? How much of that uncertainty are we willing to live with versus how much do we think we need to invest to try to drive that uncertainty down? So yeah, a lot of those concepts of trying to gather information from the right places, and it's very early in the process, but it's a very critical jumping off point for establishing that scope, which ultimately is going to be determined by the county and the Army Corps working together. The county is the agency holding that contract, being the local partner, and I'm very comforted to know that the leadership from the county, whether it's County Executive Wendell or Mark Geis or Pierre or Dave McCoy in the Watershed Coordinator's office, it's a really strong group and one that's been working on this challenge for a long time. And we as the Alliance, we're just very, very happy to try to help any way we can. And putting that information, whether it's on the website or in a common location, I think that's going to go a long way with helping to get this project, keep continue it going in a good direction.
Crazy question. What's the state of the lake? That's the title. That's the title of tonight, and I thought I'll just ask the question.
Well, like I said, it's a 13,000 acre lake, which is big. It's got about 4,000 acres of littoral zone or area of the lake where plants like to grow. It's used for a lot of different purposes, whether it's drinking water, whether it's power boating, whether it's passive enjoyment, whether it's angling. So in terms of the state of the lake, it's going to be dictated a lot by where are you, when did you experience the lake, and what was it that you were trying to do on the lake. This year, 2024, we had members working on the lake from April until the start of October, whether it was the Chautauqua Lake Partnership and participating municipalities around the lake, coordinating a chemical plant management program, whether it was Chautauqua Lake Association getting out there in May to clean up dangerous debris that had accumulated during the spring and the winter to make the lake safe for boaters out there, and then moving into their plant management program, harvesting, shoreline cleanup coming online in June, where the Chautauqua Lake Association and the town of Chautauqua worked together to clear the shorelines, 42 miles of shoreline, rimming this lake, and then all the way up to a late season sweep of debris and plant accumulation before putting equipment to bed at the very start of October. The Lake Partnership working down with the marinas and the hotel in the lower South Basin, trying some new techniques. There was a lot of progress, a lot of work done on the lake, but also a lot of progress, new ideas. Even now we're hearing about, I said April to October, but for our members, their planning, their coordination, it doesn't really stop even in the quote-unquote off-season. The Lake Association has already been putting forth some ideas for some logistical improvements with offload sites and things like that. With the Lake Partnership has been, working on, a host of improvements as well. The Chautauqua Watershed Conservancy, I don't know if you caught it, they just announced a rebranding of their consultation offerings for homeowners. So the state of the lake in terms of its care and and the effort that's being put into it is very, very strong. The state of the lake when it comes to the broad scale enjoyment, the North Basin, I've been told that the quality was quite good this year. There were certainly some challenges, even at the institution and in some of those locations that maybe don't commonly have algal blooms, but late June, early July. But I think that as the season went on, there were improvements, and it was a good long season of pretty good water quality, especially in the North Basin. We were challenged by harmful algal blooms. I think last year at this time, we were discussing, a much smaller number of reported harmful algal blooms through the state system than we are today. It was about double this year, 2024, as compared to last year. But last year was very low. Plant growth, I've heard some positive reports. We haven't seen the data and the surveys yet for 2024 for most of the plants. But what I have heard thus far, reporting from some of our members, is that they generally had some positives spinning out of those observations. It's a lake. It's a lake that's going to vary on any given day. The harmful algal bloom challenge is massive. They're challenging simply to wrap your arms around what they're doing, just based on how easily they can move from place to place, how they can be in one location at 10 in the morning and be gone by lunchtime. So there's a lot of challenges just to wrap your arms around that. How is the lake doing? We're very fortunate. The state, the DEC, and volunteers on Chautauqua Lake. They collect water samples. They've been collecting water samples since the late 1980s through the Citizen Statewide Lake Assessment Program, and we've got a very strong record of water chemistry, water clarity, and that's something that we look to. We look to the state for that analysis, but we've also made sure that any of these research teams coming in are also aware of that information and data as well, because that's such a critical sentinel going back all the way to the 80s through today. You'll see that the only constant is change, right? And that can happen on a year-to-year basis as well. So I have a positive outlook. I know that there are times when people's acute interaction with the lake is not always favorable. Whether it's the weather, we had a quite hot, quite dry summer. We had not a lot of snowpack up in the watershed last year leading into this year. Plant conditions, again, depends on the time of year. Curlyleaf pondweed is a very tricky plant to address and to understand on the lake. It grows very early, it grows very fast. In some ways, it provides very, very important ecological services. In other ways, it provides very conflicting conflict issues with those trying to use the lake. It kind of has its own management approach, whereas the Eurasian water milfoil later in the season, or the natives that sometimes in some places grow to nuisance levels, you don't see my feet moving. I'm obviously tap dancing, but it is such a complicated question when you're really trying to describe, the lake in what you probably hoped would be a brief yes or no, or a couple word answer. It's it's really nice this year to see so many people snowmobiling and ice fishing and really enjoying it. Not just, we got to remember it's a year-round resource. So, in a way, I really can't answer the state of the lake because it's always changing even today. So, the best thing we can do is to encourage people to keep using it, keep enjoying it, be smart, be aware of what the health department might be saying on a given day, what the beaches are saying on a given day. The health department staff and the staff at the park, the state park over in Long Point, they do such important work to help protect the people and our pets and those using the lake. And it's a tightrope. It's a tightrope to maintain awareness and understanding and health and safety, while also making sure to highlight that this is a big lake, and when there might be challenges in one location on the lake, there's oftentimes, within a few minutes drive, a totally different situation, and that can flip back and forth, from basin to basin. Each municipality has such unique offerings, whether it's their downtown leading to the lake, or whether it's their on the lake amenities. Or in a couple of weeks, we hope, or about a month, offerings in the wintertime up in Mayville and Chautauqua doing the winter festival or whatever iteration of that festival. It's so, just being able to go through that winding path, I hope shows you that, at least for me, it's always changing, but you almost always end up in a positive place, even if you've gone through some bumps. It's not to say we're trying to be sedentary, or we're trying to be, unaware. It's more just trying to maintain a balanced perspective and an objective perspective. When emotions are running high, that's important. We need to hear those high emotion, high intensity positions. We need to hear those. But we also need to put those in a useful place and understand that that's one point in time, that's one location in the lake. We know embayments especially are some of the most challenged locations, whether it's DeWittville Bay up north, whether it's Burtis Bay down south. We know that there are certain characteristics of the lake that cause some areas to be trouble spots more than others, whether it's accumulation or whether it's other conditions. So, really trying to trying to direct those resources so that you're aligning your needs, which are great, and you're trying to align it with resources, which are limited, and you're trying to time it right so that you achieve that maximum benefit. And that's tricky, and that's why we need so many different perspectives, so many different approaches, so many different skill sets, and that's what our membership brings to the table. And so it's a powerful team, and we're trying to improve year after year.
Well, I know that was the aspiration when this concept of alliance became a reality, when it was incorporated, and I know that, I speak on behalf of the community at large, that the fact that there is so many stakeholders and they are focused on the betterment and the idea of a balanced and sustainable aquatic ecosystem is something which is to strive for, and something which day in and day out, I know what you've led to this alliance tries to accomplish that, and to walk sometimes a political tightrope when it's where your advocacy is one thing, and gathering the data necessary to assist those in their advocacy so that it's a body you've created. So I applaud the alliance, and I applaud your leadership, and tonight's just another prime example of how you have such a great grasp of the issues at hand. And I guess I'll give you the final word, Randall, tonight, but if you had to look in the crystal ball 5 years from now, where would you like to see the lake?
Yeah, well, thank you. I really appreciate the chance to be here. It's a really meaningful conversation, and it's in a really meaningful place, but also knowing what this place represents, it puts all the things that we do in pretty good perspective and where it lies in the totality of our history. But 5 years, I like this one because we finally got a round number, so we're looking at 2030. 5 years from now will be, the Army Corps of Engineers will have completed its feasibility study for the aquatic ecosystem restoration. They'll hopefully be a couple of years down the path of securing federal dollars to actually implement some of those recommendations that will exist in that feasibility study. That will be huge. I hope that in 5 years we're well along the path towards that major federal investment in implementation. It takes time. 2 years is sometimes a blink of an eye when it comes to federal timescales. But I really hope that not only has that feasibility study process brought our stakeholders and our leaders together in a more constructive and coordinated way. I really hope that that's an indirect outcome of this Army Corps work. But 5 more years from now, the Jefferson Project will be roughly 10 years old here at Chautauqua Lake, which I think is a pretty, it's a big milestone. It's big research, and that takes time. 10 years is a good amount of time. We've come a long way in 5, so I know that from talking to John Shedd specifically at the institution, but certainly through the leadership of President Hill, Mark Wenzler at the Climate Change Initiative, the institution's work to bring the Jefferson Project along, to get it to realization, to keep it moving. Even this year, they are very interested in beginning to turn these research questions into solutions-oriented work. So that's even in 2025. So 5 years beyond that, I think we could be in a really good place in terms of using this data foundation that we've built, continuing to add to it. Data collection shouldn't end just because you begin implementation, but it should change, and I would hope that we've kind of moved into another stage of that endeavor. The Global Freshwater Institute, or I apologize to John because he showed me what it's called and I've forgotten, but this initiative to try to make Chautauqua Lake a hub for researchers not just interested in Chautauqua Lake, but interested in global freshwater resources, that could be a game changer. 5 years from now, I don't know where we'll be, down that path, but again, the trajectory that we're on now, I think the possibilities are quite, quite strong for continuing that, that positive momentum building, and that could be massive. We've seen the power of outside expertise joining local passion just in these last couple of years, but to think that outside expertise could be multiplied in a way, that's just, that amazes me to contemplate that, and how Chautauqua could be the center of it all, to our benefit and to the benefit of others. So that's another thing that might be on the horizon. I think we keep working the watershed. We keep working on the projects that help in as many time frames as we can get. So I think of the village of Lakewood. They have taken major steps on their stormwater management. They've got flooding issues within their village on the roadways and in other locations. They've got water quality challenges being in the lower section of the lake. They've taken great steps in implementing stormwater management projects that are going to have an effect on both. They're going to have a long-term impact on water quality in the lake, but they're also going to have a very short-term realization of improvements when it comes to flooding. So I think of projects like what the village is taking on, and certainly they have other places that they're looking to work, but other municipalities around the lake, seeing a blueprint for those investments. I think we continue to try to bring in those outside dollars, especially. We've been pretty, pretty strong in being able to direct local dollars to the things that the state dollars don't tend to pay for. Things like the annual maintenance programs, most of those, the state doesn't have a lot of great revenue streams for that. So trying to direct those local dollars, our ratio is, overall our balance is pretty strong. In the last 10 years, it's been about 50% watershed, 40% lake, 10% research and monitoring. So 5 years beyond that, what does that balance look like? I think the watershed continues to be a really important piece, and in 5 years, the sewer projects that the county has led on for the last several years, by 5 years from now, that whole west side of the lake will be completed. They're working on that phase 2 section up the last 3 miles from around Tom's Point up to the Prendergast Creek hatchery. That'll be major. Phase 1 is complete. Their hookups are done. So any new development along the west side of the lake within that corridor is going to be on public sewer, which is going to be huge. The utility district at Chautauqua, the other wastewater treatment plants, they put improvements in place for their phosphorus reduction. several years ago, and those things just keep paying dividends year after year. That's the beauty of those investments. They're massive, they're large, but in terms of lake quality, lake water quality, those projects are gonna be paying off another 5 years, 5 more years of positive, inputs to the lake in terms of better water quality. And technology, 5 years from now, the state has continued to lead on its harmful algal bloom mitigation initiatives. They've got several pilot projects in different parts of the state where they've been testing different approaches, different technology. I'm hopeful that 5 years from now, we'll have a much better understanding of what's out there on the market that could be permitted for use to try to help mitigate some of the negative impacts of harmful algal blooms, while still protecting that high level of water quality needed for drinking water and the like. 5 more year,s those are the big ones that come to mind. I walk out the door, I'll probably think of 5 more, but those are the types of things I think.
Well, you can save it for next year, because no doubt we'll try to do it again next year, because this is a highlight. This is a highlight to bring you back here and to see, for anybody who had actually watched this conversation 5, 6 years ago, and to see where we are today is just see a quantum leap, an actual justifiable thing. And we all appreciate your leadership, Randall, and your willingness to come and join us annually to talk about this. So thank you.
Well, thanks, Greg, and thank you to all the people that did the work to allow me to come and talk about these great things. So
Great, thank you. And thanks everybody who joined us via Zoom. This will be up on YouTube shortly. Thank you.